Welcome to Firepunk Racing Series Round 2. So today we have Rick Fox and Lynn Miller with us today. So this is a real official panel, but we wanted to bring to you talking about the first step was how Firepunk got started, what introduced us to racing, and this is going to be about Diesel Power Challenge basically. And this was kind of the start of Firepunk as a business. Rick competed in 2015, I competed in 2014 and 2015. Lynn was along for both of those years, so I figured we'd bring in all of us that had experience there because we really have a lot of good memories being there. And really what got us, myself, started in Diesel Power Challenge was Bain and Wisley. He had brought his truck to me to work on. He had a head gasket problem, it was a mess. We ended up I don't know, it was a long story, but we fixed the head gasket and ended up, something else tore up in the motor, had a rod knock or something like 2 days before we were leaving for DPC in 2013. And we had another customer engine build in the process, a local friend of mine, and he ended up buying that block and everything from him. And Friday morning we picked up a bare block from the machine shop, threw a motor together, ended up in Denver by Sunday evening. Like it was a thrash.
Yeah.
Definitely learned some things there as far as like preparedness, and also elevation was a pretty big deal with that thing, because I remember we built that twin setup here and it was awesome here. Like we got to spool the thing a couple times before we left. We didn't get to do just a whole lot more than that, and we thought it was awesome. And then you get out to Colorado and it was just like nothing.
Yeah, we spooled the thing up, did a four-wheel drive launch, pretty much an 1/8 mile pass on the street. The truck rocked out, it was fast, and we're ready to go. Threw it on the trailer, drove 20 hours to Denver, unloaded it in the parking lot at 5,000 feet elevation, and let the thing warm up, tried to spool it, and it did not make but 2 pounds of boost. So now we're in the parking lot and finding a performance store that we can find nitrous, and we did not have our shit together at all.
I just remember the pictures of Bain washing his nitrous in the hotel bathtub.
Try to warm the bottle up.
Right. So we were completely green in nitrous at that point. So that was 2013. But going to Denver with Bain was the first I really was involved with Diesel Power Challenge. I had heard about it, had read about it, but it hadn't really expressed a lot of interest in it. But when I went out there, Bain had the highest horsepower truck by quite a bit. He had the fastest truck by quite a bit. He ran a 10.8 in the quarter mile, and I think the fastest competitor was a 12.7, something like that. So he had the field covered by a mile. But because of him not being able to spool well on the line and him not being familiar, he ended up getting into the beams before he was on boost, and he got beat by a 12-second truck. And it was a little bit of just inexperience. So I know Bain, he hung his head on the steering wheel for a long time after that pass. But in the end, we learned a lot in 2013, and that's when I was like, I think I can build a truck that plays nice at elevation and win that event.
Right, and so we went with the approach of, we weren't necessarily going to win the dyno, but we were going to bring a drivable truck out there. We were going to make sure that this thing can spool quickly and it can do all of the finer details of it. And we were going to not try to get wrapped up in the dyno aspect, like in the dyno competition of it.
Horsepower war part of it.
Right.
And I should probably preference for the guys that aren't familiar with Diesel Power Challenge, this is an event in Denver, Colorado that Diesel Power Magazine hosts. And there's, 7 scored events, I think, maybe 6. There's drag race, quarter-mile drag race. There's 1/8 mile drag race with a 10,000-pound trailer behind you. Mm-hmm. There's fuel mileage test, where it's a 100-mile drive up over the mountains, and you test your fuel economy, where everybody tops off their tank, drives 100 miles, top off the tank again, and they calculate accurate fuel mileage. There's a dyno competition. There's a sled pull. And then there's an obstacle course. So you have the 10,000-pound trailer behind you, and you have to run an obstacle course, and it's a timed to get through the course, back through the cones, and park it back in your spot. So driver skill, it plays a part of it. So that was, with Bainen's setup, his turbo setup was so big in elevation without it being able to spool, and you hook the trailer behind it, the thing was a dog. You just took off, and you had no boost, no power. And
Well,
if
even
you-
if we would know now what we knew, or know then what we know now, like we could have put a nitrous system on that thing to make that thing
Right.
play sweet.
Well,
but
that was also
that was-
before good tuning too,
Yeah,
because
right.
that was a HP tuner's truck. Or
that
not,
was
I'm
a
sorry,
Smarty
Smarty.
SSR with UDC
Yeah.
Pro, where you had timing, rail pressure, duration, and a TPS map.
Right.
Like
Yep.
that's all you had. So we've come a long way since then, I guess.
Yeah,
but
a lot.
I
So,
guess
yeah.
coming back from 2013, I had just finished a truck, Rick Clark, and that was 200% over, extra G injectors, dual pumps, and had a 366 484 twin turbo setup on it, and that truck absolutely ripped. I mean, it spooled fast, it was responsive, and I remember the week after DPC finishing that truck and driving around the block and going like, this truck would win DPC. And that's what pretty much the recipe to a T that I put in my application, because I had my quad cab at the time, but it wasn't built. So when I sent in the application for DPC, I used that customer's recipe build, and I said, this is what I think I'm going to put together for DPC, and I got voted in.
Yeah. So you and Matt Kaufman entered that first
Yeah.
year, got voted in, and ended up pretty much building somewhat close trucks as far as power
Yeah.
plant and everything.
Matt Kaufman already had a built setup. He had like an 800 horsepower setup. So he had injectors and pumps and all that stuff, but we ended up going to a bigger setup on his. He was 5'9" still, and I went to a 6.7 motor. So I pretty much bought a 6.7 motor, flipped it over, put Corilla rods in it, 12 millimeter mains, stock pistons, 2 flat surfaces, ARP 625s, had a D&J stage 2 head, and I had dual pumps and 200% overs and a 66 484 setup. And Kaufman had pretty much the identical setup, except he had a 5.9 base with billet rods and stuff. So we both had 1,200 horsepower trucks that were solid street trucks. They spooled fast, they weren't crazy. So we go out to Denver, and you know, first evening everybody shows up, and you're popping your hoods, and everybody's got these massive.
Some
turbos.
people are popping their hoods.
Yeah. Eric Clausen had to be super secretive. So if you're watching this, I don't think those secrets really help with that. Love you, man. But yeah, like Corey Chomos was out there. He had 115 millimeter huge turbo. Like we felt pretty confident about our trucks. Drove them around here, and then we get out there and we start looking at the competition. And we're like, I remember coming to the hotel room going like,
We have the tiniest turbos here.
yeah, we literally have the smallest turbos in the whole competition. I hope we brought enough. But it did pay off because we ended up with first and second place that year. But that year was, that event is a ton of fun.
Well, and I think the thing that really set it apart for us is we really looked at every aspect of that competition and figured out what we could do to not overlook one competition. Like
Right.
the one that we focused on quite a bit was the obstacle course, because literally that one you can do well in without having to tear your truck up or having
Right.
to have high horsepower. It's about being prepared, knowing how to back a trailer. So
Right.
when we got out there, we rented a U-Haul trailer to load all of our tools into, and that thing was hooked to Levon's truck everywhere we went, aside from when we were competing.
Right.
So
The night
we
before,
spent quite a
right.
few evenings in the parking lot, backing that thing through cones and just getting familiar with doing that kind of stuff, and that made a pretty big difference.
Right. It just got to the point where I could back that trailer around where it was muscle memory. Like you didn't have to think twice. You knew how to turn it. I know the parking lot beside our hotel was a business, and so in the evenings it was empty, so I'd go in the evening and I would back trailers for 45 minutes until the transmission temp was at 200 degrees, and then I'd say, okay, I think I'm good.
Yeah.
But it was still like almost like 1 out of 10 times, if I'm making a fast back in, I could hit it 9 times, but there was always 1 out of 10 that I think I'd mess up. So any event like this, it takes a good truck, it takes a good driver, and it takes a little bit of luck.
Right.
Because
And we went through the whole truck before we left, just trying to make sure that we had everything ready. And then we did this lovely thing where we put this new steering box and this redhead,
Yeah.
we went through, we replaced anything, it was a higher mile truck, and we tried to
Right.
be ready. So we'd put this new steering system on it, to make it better. And then we get out there, and what happens?
the power steering pump takes a shit literally. We drove to the drag strip, and we were going to do the trailer obstacle course first. No, it was going to be trailer drag race and then the obstacle course. And I backed the U-Haul trailer in its spot, and as I'm backing into my spot to unhook the trailer, my steering just goes tight. And the power steering pump took a crap, and it had sent brass shavings through everything. And I had just taken my stock working 195,000 mile pump off and replaced it with like a Napa pump just before the event, because I was like, it's got almost 200,000 miles on it. Let's just make sure it's all new. It was a preventive maintenance type thing, and it definitely bit me in the butt. So we sent somebody after a power steering pump right away, but we started looking at the timing. Like, you have to have a gear puller to pull the gear off that pump. And we were afraid we're going to get it apart, and if we have any problem, we would get a do not finish or do not start.
And this is Bandamere Day, where you have 3 scored events, like all back to back. So it's like it's a full day. And we thought maybe we'd have a chance if we could survive through the first 2 events. We thought maybe over lunch we could change it, but ended up we just said forget about it. We're not going to take the chance, and we're going to do the best we can.
Pretty much, they only promised us 45 minutes to fix it and to pull the power steering pump in a parking lot, press the gear, change the gear. We thought it was too big of a risk to take for that 45 minutes. And I had gone up, and they had the cones laid out, so I kind of lined up where you weren't allowed to practice on the course, but I kind of spaced myself out to make sure that I could actually make the turn without power steering. And it was literally hanging on the steering wheel as hard as you could. Just made the clear.
And there's what, 2 sections you have to back up there as well.
Yeah.
So you're coming to a stop, and you're trying to turn the steering wheel from mostly a stop, and it just so ended up muscling through that whole thing, and got a second place out of it, I think.
Yeah, I think second place on the obstacle course.
Levon Miller going to be our first competitor out. Let me see those forearms for a second, because we heard a rumor that there's no power steering in this truck.
No, I came to the track this morning and was practiced back in trailer last night, and unhooked the trailer and made one turn and heard a pop, and the power steering pump broke. So little brass shavings in the power steering fluid, and we didn't think we had enough time to change it. So we're going to fight it out this time, change it right after this competition for the races.
So Levon Miller decided to get aggressive on the starting line there, spooled the turbo up a little bit, got a little wheel spin out of the hole. Okay, so we saw he nipped 2 cones there, but since they did not come over, no penalty, correct?
As long as they don't move or fall over, it's no penalty. They can touch them and scare them a little bit.
And one of the things you need to be very careful of in this section of the course is making sure the truck is squared up before you get into reverse. Well, I guarantee we'll see guys that just don't go that extra couple degrees, and they get sideways, and then everything goes wild left to right.
And then also with the long wheelbase, you have to keep it in mind that these guys have to make this gate right here. And we've positioned the cone so that it doesn't favor one wheelbase. Long and short will both have the problems.
I will tell you what, there's no indication that this thing does not have power steering. He's doing a fantastic job wheeling the truck around the course.
Yeah, I'm impressed. I thought for sure this would be a struggle, and he's been doing great.
And he looks like he is in fantastic shape to put it home here in the first shot. This is a very, very fast time. Wow.
I feel like it almost helped because I was so worried about just steering. I didn't even have time to get nervous about backing a trailer. The backing the trailer was like, I've got this. I'm just worried about being actually turned, because going to the right, it would only go like half a turn before it would lock up, but going to the left, I could go almost full lock. But that was, that's where the little bit of luck comes in. You have to have, you have one thing that can completely screw you.
Yeah.
Where you think you're ready for a challenge like that. Right.
We're going to back up just a little bit, but like I remember on the trip out, we ended up, we loaded your truck and Matt's truck up on Hostetler's step deck, and had
behind the
Peterbilt. So we felt like pretty big ballers rolling out there. Like
that was cool.
Just a bunch of little country boys, and we got this nice rig to haul us out there. So. But then, like we talked earlier, we got to the parking lot, and all of a sudden we didn't feel quite as baller because we felt, underpowered or whatever. But
we had turbo envy.
Yeah. But then going into the dyno was the first event, and I don't remember exactly how we scored fairly well there, right?
Yeah. Second and third, I think. I can't remember.
I think we scored well because of torque numbers.
Right.
I do remember that. Yeah. So it's a combined torque and horsepower number. And obviously, all the numbers out there are super stingy because you're at elevation. It's a Mustang dyno, and they're uncorrected numbers. So, we didn't have anything super crazy go on that first day, other than
not in 2014.
Nitrous, I think, was a little bit of a. This is kind of going to be a recurring theme in all of our racing stuff back in the day. Is we never quite had our nitrous stuff figured out. I think that was the year that we had a solenoid on it. and then the solenoid wouldn't work, and we ended up just like strapping a straight line on it and just cracking the bottle.
in the
Yeah.
cab or something. Yeah.
Or was that the second
that was
year?
15.
Okay, so that was the second
15.
year. Whatever.
Yeah.
Well,
Because
15
I remember KJ getting the video or the picture of
Yeah, you're
the
right.
nitrous
Yep.
line just blowing
Right.
right
Yeah,
into
you're right. That
the,
would've
into
been
the
the second
44.
Right.
So anyhow, I guess clearly I don't remember things in the
Wow.
order that
They kind of run
happened.
together. But it is. I mean, we really have good memories. Like that. That was very instrumental to us because those were times where the magazines were that was your news. Like
Yeah.
you didn't have near as much chitter chatter, and we were also. I was very transparent in my build and what I did to everything and what my reasoning was behind it. So I had gone on the forums and made threads like, this is what I'm building, this is why I'm building it, this is my thought process behind it. Leading up to that point in the diesel industry, there were so many people that when they were actually in competitions like that, it was all hush mouth. Don't pop your hood, don't tell anybody your setup, it's top secret. Like they wanted to have the recipe that worked. Well, I wanted to promote business because I wanted to be able to do well in a competition, then come home and have people come to me and say, I want what you have. So that's why I was just 100% transparent. The risk in that is somebody goes out, your competitor builds the exact same truck and competes against you with your exact recipe. But what we found is everybody wants to have their own taste to it, and very seldom does that really happen anyway. So you're better off just telling guys what you're doing. We still do it in racing.
In that competition, it was really hard for guys to walk away from the dyno competition and not have to win that. Like,
Right.
It seems
Everybody
like that's
was gonna-
everything everybody focuses
Right.
on, and it just guys ruin setups almost at the expense of getting a good dyno number.
Right. They finally get the horsepower number they want, but then the truck's not drivable. It has no drivability. And something like the Ultimate Call-Out Challenge, where it's just drag racing, dyno, and sled pull, man, horsepower is king. But in the Diesel Power Challenge, you have to have drivability because you cannot run it through an obstacle course with a turbo that doesn't light. Because Bainen's setup, by the time the turbo would light, you're blowing the tires off and you're getting rowdy and you're drifting through corners with a trailer, and it's just not going to work. So that's the fun part about the DPC, and being at elevation in Denver really added a nice touch to it.
No, I'm a firm believer that the whole setting there, like ATS's facility, the Denver being at elevation, and then being able to drive up over the mountains for our fuel drive or whatever, that and being at Bandimere, like I don't think you can have a competition that's going to have the same feel much anywhere else. Like it was just really kind of the perfect spot for that whole thing, and I think until you experience it, you don't quite understand it all. But like, I also, looking back, like we have yet to do a diesel thing that feels anything like that. Like it almost felt like by the end of the week, you knew everybody so well, and it was like kind of almost like a club.
Right.
And everybody got to know, everybody really well. And I mean, just the accomplishment of finishing is a little bit like a drag week kind of a feeling. It's just like a long grind, and like people wrenching all night, having fun in between.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. And having to do a fuel mileage challenge going up over the Continental Divide.
Yeah.
That's what, 10,000, 11,000
Well,
feet?
you go up, I think we go up over 11,000 feet.
Yeah.
See, I never got to do that. So.
Yeah, it was the second year they
Yeah.
took that away
Right.
because of our lovely three-letter friends that don't like competition vehicles on the road. So, but yeah, that was definitely. I mean, the sights along that drive were just amazing. Like it was a really cool thing, and we experienced probably 3 different seasons in 2 hours because it was sunny and nice in Denver, and you get up to the mountain and it's snowing and cold, and drive through some rain. I don't know. It was
Well, first year you guys lost what, 1 or 2 trucks going up?
I
the
think
drive?
What's the blue?
I don't
Duramax?
remember his name, but it was the
Custom Auto
Custom auto truck. He blew
yeah.
a water line or something stuck
Right.
beside the road and couldn't make it. But yeah, it's not just in Ohio here. We would just go out there and set the cruise and go run to the next stop sign and turn left. But there, it's a whole different ball game when you're going from 5,000 feet up to 11,000 feet, then back down, and you're trying to get good fuel mileage doing it. So it was a good time.
Kind of going back to looking at the individual events. So after the obstacle course was the 8th Mile Trailer Tow, and that one threw everyone for a loop because nobody had ever been to a drag strip with a trailer and a Bobcat behind their truck, and trying to figure out how to get that off of the line. Well, let's just say it creates a lot of broken parts when you don't know how to do it, and it's definitely, I mean, we pulled our hair out trying to figure out how to do it best, and Matt ended up showing us how to do it that year. Like
Right. I think he won it in 2014, and then I won the trailer tow, I think, in 2015.
Like we weren't sure, if you didn't boost up, you're going to come out and you're just going to bog it out of the hole, and you're not going to have a great time. But everybody that boosted up seemed to just really blow the tires off and, go into driveline chatter and break stuff and whatever. And Matt figured out that if you boost it up like you normally would and get good boost, but then have some foot control coming out of the hole rather than flat footing it like you would on a drag race. That
he pretty much spooled up to 20 pounds, but instead of just flat footing, he just kind of feathered right into it. And as soon as he got it up into converter lockup, nailed it.
Yeah.
But like Tony Rizzi, when he was out there in 2013, he had the dually out there, and I just remember seeing all 4 tires bouncing off the ground. Like it was just shaking like crazy. I think he broke the diff in the front and the rear and the transmission, like all in one shot. So and then they thrashed and we're back at it.
Definitely
later,
a brutal event, but it's an interesting one. Like I still think it's probably one of my more favorite events, just because it's everybody's trying to figure it out or whatever.
We've talked about doing something similar. I mean, we have the all truck challenge now. That's what Sarah Phillips and the King of the Street. But really, it poses a big problem with promoting competition vehicles on the street, because with EPA and everything that's going on with diesel motorsports now, we have to kind of separate. We need to keep the street legal emissions friendly vehicles that are registered for street use, and then we have to have our competition only vehicles, and kind of there's a lot more of a divide separating that stuff now. So it's kind of hard to bring that back. I don't think we'll ever have it.
I don't think we'll ever have it again.
Quite the way it was. So I don't know. There's a lot of things about 2014. But when you win, you're allowed to defend your title the next year. So I won 2014. Matt Kaufman got second place. And then we went back in 2015, and that's when Rick got voted in.
Yep.
And he was not working for Firepunk at that time, but he ended up coming down. You were what, hour and 45 minutes or so?
A couple hours north. And I would come down almost every day and work on the truck. And then work all day, come home, work here for a couple hours, go home, sleep, work all day, come back. It was a thrash of a time, because they let you know, like a month before.
And you don't get much heads up.
We did not plan on the truck actually making it in. So Lynn had built a 6.7 that we had assembled, just Carrillo rods and a girdle and 250%. I had a 12 mil and then a old TNC pump I bought from Bainan on top. And Bainan's stage 2 head I bought from him that we put on that motor, 366 484 setup in my second gen I had.
So it ended up being a very similar power plant to what we had the first year.
But it was a little lighter.
It was a little lighter, but we copied that same setup that we knew that worked.
And then that was also when you went to, like, Drew built you the first wet deck plate enforcer. So the first year we had done that 6.7, and we had used Interstate McBee bearings and everything, and it made it through the season. But by the end of the year, when we tore it down, the bearings were squashed out the side, and
the main bearings were squished out the side. There was fretting on the main caps, because it just had 12 millimeter mains in it, and it had the Carrillo rod, had the wrist pin bushings beat out of it. So those were stuff that I still today, when customers call me and make recommendations on an engine, I go back to I know what happens when you just buy a stock motor and flip it over and put rods in it and run it, because after 80 passes and 20,000 miles,
that engine was not far from catastrophic failure.
I mean, it was a throwaway motor, not quite, but
it didn't have a girdle or anything in it either. That motor just had the factory block stiffener in it.
Well, and that's something that I learned back then. I pulled the main caps off, and Drew's like, "Is there any fretting? It looked like the mains were moving around." I'm like, "Looks good to me." And then Drew looks at it and is like, "Dude, the mains have been moving all over the place because there's been, the fretting. If there's not machined surfaces on your caps and your block, then your mains are moving, and it's actually exchanging metals between the cap and the mains." And that's why I think, see a lot of Facebook mechanics that are like, "Oh yeah, you don't need a girdle." Well, they don't even know what fretting looks like, and I didn't know. I mean, that's where we've just learned a lot through this whole process, and it's all comes from beating on our own stuff and having to fix the motor 3 times, and then that's why we wanted to go with the Enforcer motor, and that's what we had talked about. It's like, I want to keep a true 6.7 liter, because going from Matt Kaufman's truck with a 5.9 with the same setup as mine with a 6.7, mine was like a 400 RPM difference. Like the 6.7 was the winner for sure for drivability. Well, now you have to still worry about a 6.7 block splitting the cylinder bores, because Bainon split a block, and there was like 3 guys that had split a block in 2014 at like 1250, 1300 horsepower. And so we were like, what's the fix? Well, Drew's like, well, if you sleeve it, then you lose your displacement. But he said, if we go to a deck plate setup, then we can keep our displacement and have the strength of a ductile iron sleeve. And then he's like, I've built a deck plate before, I just haven't made one that had water in it, you know. So that was the first wet deck plate motor, and getting all that sealed up, and the thought process behind that. There was a lot of unknowns getting that motor together, but it worked very, very well. And that's now kind of been the platform that we go to for big power that has coolant in it, because it's just you don't have to any sacrifice of displacement.
Yeah, so that second year we ended up getting Levon returning champ, Rick got voted in, and then one of our other customers, Jerry Adkins, got voted in as well. So if 2 wasn't enough, then 3 should be better, and getting everything ready was a breeze. Like,
It was a lot. Like, I mean, just for a month straight of like every night working till 2 a.m. in the morning, going home, sleeping a couple hours, coming back and being back at the shop at 7:30, and we were tired, but
it was crazy. Like, I don't remember, like, I mean, obviously we were working up to the last minute, but did we run into any major hiccups, like, leading right up to it? I don't remember anything super crazy.
I don't remember anything that was super crazy. I mean, pretty much, because I flew out there.
Yeah.
Oh,
you
really?
guys all drove out there separate. Yeah.
Okay.
I just remember everybody left on time. Like, I was there a day early, so it must not have been that much of a
2015,
problem.
I was ready. I remember driving the truck around for a week or 2.
Okay.
Just making sure everything
Well,
worked.
and I think that was part of the whole thing of, like, we knew that preparedness was part of it, and we actually kind of tried to have our ducks in a row ahead of time, and we started to get enough experience to know that you need to start way sooner than you ever thought you might. And we also had the advantage of knowing that you were going to go, you know, the whole year. Like, we weren't waiting till the last month to know that you were in. So that made a difference. But so yeah, I don't know, what did we do good the second year that we didn't the first, or
well,
I don't
Rick
know.
laid the smackdown on the dyno, and that was not just nitrous.
That was
a
all
huge
nitrous.
torque number.
Yep.
And that was you did, what was it, 1260 or something uncorrected?
It was something. It was
a big number.
It was
for
a big
that
number
dyno.
for that dyno for that event. It was the record for the event for a long time. I don't know if it ever got beat as a total or not, but
I think they have had some higher numbers on their, like, dyno days or something.
well,
now,
yeah, but not for on the event
Right,
itself.
yeah.
But you guys had problems on the dyno day itself.
Yeah, because we put external wastegates on it, because, you know, we're going to spray the crap out of this thing and make a big number, and don't want to blow these little turbos up.
We
So
also put dual air dogs on it because we weren't going to have enough fuel.
I remember that. Yep.
And one of those may or may not have been plumbed backwards.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, that was, I forgot about that. But 2 pumps on. Well, they sent the new ones, and the new one had a new style platform where the feed was flipped on the other side, and we plumbed them in the same. They were facing each other, so like this. And when we plumbed it in, the feed was hooked up to the return. So we had one pump doing work, and the other one taking all the work away. I mean, that's another one of those things. The truck ran fine. It had no problems until we really squeezed on it hard. We couldn't figure out where the numbers were.
I mean, we had the advantage of going last on that day because we were the defending champs. So we knew what we had to hit. And at that, like, the thing wasn't making the number that we needed it to, but yet it made enough, I think, for second place.
Yeah. I thought it made like.
And we knew we weren't going to catch Rick. So at that point,
something.
we just said, forget about it, and we'll, you know, figure this out overnight, hopefully.
We had plumbed the nitrous in the way we did to where the nitrous was just blowing straight into the turbo.
Yeah.
And then then what, that night you guys took and capped off the wastegates?
Yeah. And
Yeah.
the truck was like a whole other animal.
Right.
We were blowing the wastegates open. It was just blown open on spring pressure, though they were coming open at like 20 pounds of drive pressure. And we had really thought this through, because this sounds like, well, duh, you guys would know better. But we had taken a Steed Speed manifold, capped off all the ends, capped off everything, and we pressurized the manifold and we had the wastegates set to where they didn't open until 60 pounds. And we're like, that should be perfect. You know, get 60 pounds of drive pressure in it, then it starts cracking open. By the time 80 pounds, the wastegates are open pretty good, and we'd be able to spray it hard. What we didn't take into account is how much heat changes that. So on the bench when it was cold, those gates cracked at 60 pounds, but in the truck, at 20 pounds, you could hear the things open because we had them plumbed to atmosphere. So you get 20 pounds of boost on the gauge and just cracking the throttle, you hear the gates open. You're like, what? You know, so those are the things that heat is energy, and it really makes a huge difference on wastegates. But
That
that's
experience kept us from using wastegates for a long time.
Yeah, it
and
did.
Till
Well, yeah,
we finally
because-
were forced
yeah.
into it again, and then we actually took some time to figure it out. And now they're not quite as evil as they used to be, but they
Right.
do take some work to get them dialed in and to get all your.
But back then, it went from like 1160 to 1360 horsepower just plugging the gates.
Yeah.
There was like a 200 horsepower power loss with the gates, and we put them on there to make more power, and it worked against us. So those are all things that we've learned. But overall, that was a great 2-year run.
Right.
The sled pull even was a challenge because out here in Ohio, the dirt is clay, and out there it's sand. And there's no real way to practice sled pulling on sand without sled pulling on
There's
sand.
only so much you can do with not being allowed to change tires
not being
and
able to
not
change
being able to
tires.
hang weights.
Right.
And so it's really just kind of I don't know, what is it, a wheel speed thing or what it is, or keep your truck from bouncing
Right.
thing too.
Well, I'd
Like,
say mine was a bouncing
you
problem.
see a lot of bouncing when there's
There's no
not
weight on
weights
the
on the
nose.
nose.
Yep.
So, but you ended up breaking an axle shaft at the end or
I broke
something?
both rear axle
Yeah.
shafts.
Yeah.
Ended up breaking them both, and then drove it back to the hotel in 4-wheel drive.
Okay.
Front wheel drive, I guess it would have been at that point,
Yeah.
but then changed them out so that we could probably
Right.
go to dinner that night. But
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that was a fun part because we'd drive the trucks to dinner and stuff. You know, it wasn't like we were trailering them out. And then like coming home from DPC in 2014, then I was towing Matt Kaufman. Or like
no,
that
that was
was
15.
That was 15.
Because in 14 you guys had the
You were on
semi.
the semi on 14.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the Tristan blew a tire on
Yeah.
the way home.
And I was on the trailer, so I unloaded my truck off the trailer because I had the roll bar and stuff in it. That's why I didn't really want to drive. I didn't want to feel like taking the roll bar out, so pull
Yeah,
the
that's
roll
another
bar.
thing that I kind of forgot about. That was kind of a big deal. The first year we didn't have a roll bar. Or no,
Yeah,
we did. We
no,
did.
He didn't because I remember I was racing Matt Kaufman. It came to me and Matt in the
Yeah,
finals.
you're right, yeah.
And I had already gotten a warning for going faster
That's
than
right.
1150.
Yeah, you get one warrant. Yep.
And if I went faster than 1150, even if I won, I wouldn't get the points
Yeah.
to win. So I pedaled it against Kaufman, let him take the win.
He still had his warning left that he could break out.
He
if
could break
yeah.
out and get a warning. So I pedaled it, let him take the win in the drag race, and that gave him the extra points that he needed to get second place. So like it all worked out, but that was interesting because I never thought going out there that we'd be worrying about roll cage
Right.
safety regulations, and that's where I didn't want to put a roll bar in my daily driver. That's where the whole bolt-in roll bar stuff ever came from, and now we see that quite a bit.
Yeah. So then the second year we had the roll bar, and yeah, we didn't have to worry about that kind of stuff. That was really nice. But what are some of the after hours highlights, or what are some of the after hours things you remember from out there?
I remember Ryan Anderson.
I remember that.
Ryan Anderson pedaling a bicycle that he found at ATS's shop, and he lost a bet or made a bet. He probably wanted to do it. He was butt naked on this bicycle or biking through ATS.
Remember
and
all those
It was
videos.
surprising everyone because it was all of a sudden it was like, did not need to see that.
Well, I mean-
naked man on a bicycle.
ATS was the place to be in the evenings, though,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
everybody was thrashing to get ready for the
yeah.
next day. Like, we got done with the dyno, the first thing we did was went to the lift and pulled the trans
Yeah.
out right away because
Right.
we were assumed that we had twisted an input shaft.
Yeah.
'cause
I remember
we had standard size input shafts still.
Yeah.
the first year it was Corey Chomos's truck, in there. They were trying to
start.
figure out what's going on with it and all that stuff.
That starter should have got a trophy.
It should have.
And they cranked on that truck for hours trying to start that thing. And it was what, the reluctor wheel or something on the
I
crank?
thought it
I
was
never
something
knew
with
what
a
it was.
crank or reluctant.
Duramax things, I have no idea. I don't know. Something.
Pretty much, he was never able to make the event, but they were trying really hard, and we ended up even pushing the truck onto the dyno, I think,
right.
so that he could. Yeah, so
He got some
yeah.
points or something instead of it did not finish. Or
But then he came back the next year in 15.
that's true,
Remember, they let him
yeah.
back in 15. I don't know if he got voted back in.
No,
or
they
was
let
it
him,
they,
because he was voted in, wasn't ever able to compete. They let him
Okay.
back in.
It's special ed Canadian things like.
Yeah, but he had really put a lot of effort in the truck, and it was sad that he couldn't compete in that first year. And then the second year, I think he got the Carnage Award.
That he did, yeah.
So that was another one of those setups that made big power, but when you hook a trailer behind it and then the turbo lights, things get rowdy and
Yeah, because they
parts
had like
break.
a 150 or 130 precision out
Yeah,
in front.
something
it was huge.
I also remember the second year we fought weather quite a bit. On track day at Bandamere, we had rain and weren't able to get stuff finished. Let's just stay there for a hot minute. Sean and KJ and the DPC crew and all of us weren't necessarily friends, probably there for a little bit because we weren't all quite seeing eye to eye on how some things were handled.
Well,
but
yeah, I mean,
then I think it ended up, having to get pushed into the next day. And by the time the next day rolled out, I think we had all gotten on the same page and kind of figured out.
I can't even remember.
well, how
what
did that
was.
work? Because the first day we
they were gonna
made it
use-
through one round and what started raining then.
They were going to use the trailer tow standings for our qualifying order for drag racing, and they had put us on a sportsman ladder instead of a competition ladder. So it wasn't one racing 10, it was one racing 5 and two it was all goofy. And then we went into that first round of eliminations, and some of the faster trucks, like I think JD Gleason got knocked out first round by a really slow truck because of some unfortunate something. So I don't know. It was just.
Jared Rice blew up that turbo when I was racing him first round, and then it started raining, and we said to do it all over again.
Right.
It's like the first round never happened.
Yeah.
I learned a lot about 6'4" guys that weekend. They're on the dyno, and I think it was Jared Rice makes a dyno pull, freaking coolant blowing everywhere. It's like, it's just flash boiling in the radiator. Not that gets the problem. I've learned that Ford guys, they're just used to it.
Yeah, it's just another day for them.
Yeah, it's just flash boil in the radiator, no big deal.
We all knew he blew a head gasket there, though, right? I'm just kidding. He gets all worked up when people say that.
JD Gleason, he was really going to have it for the quad cab. He just didn't have enough. We just brought the gap train on that Ford. It's all in good fun. We're still good friends with all those guys, and that's the fun part of it is like that the Dodgers really could kick their butts. But no, those were monumental moments for us at Firepunk in our racing. I think we had so much fun. We're like, we want to do more of that.
Well, and it was a big springboard in our business too, because it was between 14 and 15 that we moved from the dairy farm over here to the shop.
Between 13 and 14.
Okay, so we had just moved into here.
Yeah.
And but then that was the year that we really grew. I mean, we went from 4 employees to, what was it? Yeah, I thought it was 10 or 15. It was a lot.
Right.
Crazy growth that first year. And a lot of that is accredited just to the reputation that we built, with DPC stuff. So.
And that was where we're talking about being transparent. And I think the industry was hungry for good, honest business, and I was determined to offer good, honest business. Treat people fairly, explain stuff to what's going on, try to be helpful. And that's why in our racing, we still want to do that. Like, we want to go out and race. Everybody's buying parts, build their trucks, and then they come to the events and race. We want to be there to support those guys, and we're always looking to try to find better parts, better pieces. That way you guys don't have to build your engine 3 times in 2 years and spend half a fortune. It's all expensive. It's just we're trying to make it as affordable as possible by helping guys do it right the first time.
It's a little bit harder to do it now as a little bit of a bigger business, but that's some of the reason that we do some of the YouTube stuff that we do, to try to explain some of this stuff and just get the word out and help people out as much as we can. So.
Right. But overall, I would say anytime if you have a truck and you have the opportunity to do some kind of a challenge like all truck challenge or some kind of a multi-function event like that with your truck, if you have the means and the people that you can put together and do it, try it sometime. Like you will have a ton of fun if you go into it with the idea of obviously wanting to have fun. We went with the idea of also wanting to win. You can't do the Ultimate Call-Out Challenge and plan on winning if you don't have it's ridiculous what it takes to win Ultimate Call-Out Challenge. So, but you can compete with that still, and you can still go and be a part of it and have fun. You may place top 10, and still have a great time. It's good. It's a good experience.
Well, some of the best customers that you're around while you're there, the ones that are there just having fun.
Right.
Hey man, you got 10th. I know, sweet, I got 10th.
Right.
Like they're just so excited, and that's the kind of vibe you want to be around while you're at the track doing that type of stuff.
Right.
Because those are the guys that just you want to help, that you want to be there for, because they're just so excited to be doing all that.
Yeah, it's a ton of fun. So that's going to be the next thing, because I won 2 years in a row, and I was not allowed to come back in 2016. And that was kind of like an uproar. Like I remember in the awards banquet, and then KJ was like, we look forward to having you back next year. I just assumed that was my invitation to come back. And then it was like June of next year when stuff starts buzzing on the internet that I wasn't able to compete again. And I was like, what? So I made a phone call and found out that no, you can only win twice. I don't think even KJ knew that at the time.
Yeah,
I don't think he did at that
KJ
time
was
either.
kind of coming into it and
he
didn't realize that there was...
He'd only gotten hired like a couple months before the event ever happened. He'd never even been to it before.
So that kind of like buzzed the internet, and everybody was bummed that they wouldn't be able to have defending Dodge there to defend the title for 2016. And that's when Diesel World, the competing magazine, started combined with Custom Auto, and they created the Ultimate Call-Out Challenge. And I remember getting that invitation in October?
Yeah,
I think I got an email and it said, hey, you're invited to the Ultimate Call-Out Challenge. Pretty much we're calling out the top 30 trucks in the nation, and we think that you've made the list to be in the top 30. And, you had names like ATS and Industrial Injection, Fleece and Wagler, and all these what I would view as companies that are 20 years in business, or they have a lot more experience than us. They have a lot more funds than us, and we're like, how in the world are we going to compete against that with the quad cab? Because here I got a nice hot street truck, but they got race trucks, and and that's what started this whole. That started a whole other.
We'll get into that. We'll get into that.
Yeah.
On
The next video will be that.
Right. Next video, we'll get into the Ultimate Call-Out Challenge, all the stuff that changed. But
the hours of sleep lost over Ultimate Call-Out Challenge makes DPC seem like nothing.
Right. Yeah. But the EPC really was monumental for us, and I still got the quad cab in the parking lot. So customers show up, I still take them around the block and give them rides in it, and it really gives people the bug because they're like, I want that. And it takes a long time to build that, because if you take the quad cab and you say, I want that, and you bring me a stock truck, you're gonna spend close to $100,000. It's sickening to think what it costs to actually build a truck of that level. But I see a lot of guys who know what they want to end up with, and then we'll build them a plan like, this is where you start with, and you work your way through, and it might take you 10 years to get there, but 10 years later you got your goal. And that's what motorsports is about. It's about tinkering, having a hobby. It gives you something to do with your kids, your friends, your dad. I see a lot of different father-son. I see two buddies that are just, that's their garage time, and it's what keeps us sane in this crazy world.
Yeah, it keeps your mind off all the problems, but can also be some problems too, but they're a lot more fun problems than your everyday to day problem.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's wrap this up. I would say thanks for watching. Again, leave comments below anything that you want us to address in the next videos for going into the Ultimate Call-Out Challenge. And we're going to continue this Firepunk Racing series all the way up into our current racing program.
I don't know if you guys can guess who the first place winner of this year is. This has never happened in the history of Diesel Power Challenge where somebody dominated so much. This person had 2 second place finishes and 4 first place finishes, earning 96.97 out of 100 points. Levon Miller!
Well, Levon Miller, one more time, we're standing up here together. The most dominating performance in the history, the 10-year history of this event. I don't have words for it, do you?
Very grateful. We worked our butts off, and we put together a truck that works at elevation, and it paid off.